Hello and welcome back to my channel What If Deku 2O. Join us as we delve into the realms of fanfiction and fantasy, bringing you the best stories and discussions. Today, we're kicking off part 2 of our series, What If Deku Was Teleported into the World of Despair? If you enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more content in the future. The author of this story is AceAkuma from FanfictionNet. All the relevant links are in the description. Feel free to say hello to the author on their profile. Now, let's dive into the fanfic. On a cliff where you could see the night raid base just a little, the base blended into the scenery, making it hard to see where the base was actually. A man then stepped out of the forest, dressed in a black cloak with a wit kitsune mask on. He approached the edge of the cliff as he stared at the base. Finally, the course of history will change now that you have arrived, Izuku Midoriya, the man muttered. As the wind blew, the man looked up at the sun as he turned around. I have high expectations, young hero. With that, the man opened a dark portal and stepped inside, completely vanishing from the premise. With Izuku. As Izuku and Tatsumi followed AceAkuma, each carrying baskets. As they walked behind the girl, Izuku questioned why they just carried baskets. Where's the rod? Are we fishing? Izuku asked in his mind. Izuku then saw a clearing in front of them as they walked out of the forest. They were hit with a stunning view of a waterfall as nature was surrounding them. Izuku, completely awed by the view, he stared at the sight for a while until, what the hell are you doing? He heard Tatsumi shout behind him. Izuku turned around only to see AceAkuma pulling up her shirt. Izuku froze as he quickly turned around. He stood still, stiff as a board. What are you two doing? She asked. Izuku shut his eyes as a million thoughts were running through his head. Oh, you're just in swimwear, Tatsumi sighed. Izuku opened his eyes and turned around to see AceAkuma in a white swimsuit. Izuku turned completely red as he just stood there like an idiot. AceAkuma walked past him as she stretched a bit. Izuku snapped out of it. Wait, how are we going to catch fish? We'll be catching koga tuna with our bare hands, she responded to Izuku's question. Izuku widened his eyes at the way she caught fish. Wait, the koga tuna, aren't they very vigilant? Tatsumi questioned. AceAkuma ignored him as she dived into the lake. Izuku looked down as she was deep in the water. After a few seconds, a bunch of tuna started to fly out of the water as it started to land in AceAkuma's basket. Izuku was awed by the feat as AceAkuma popped out of the water. Make sure you conceal your presence and catch them by surprise, AceAkuma instructed. Tatsumi smirked as he then started to strip. All right then, bring it on. He dove into the water as Izuku stood there, blinking for a second. I guess I'll join as well, he muttered as he started to take off his clothes as well. He then dove into the water as a splash could be heard throughout the forest. A few hours later. Ha 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 ha, Leon started to laugh as she held her stomach and placed her foot on the table. As hours passed, Izuku, Tatsumi, and AceAkuma returned, as they brought back tuna but well. So you two only caught half as much as AceAkuma altogether, Negenda summed up the situation AceAkuma told her. Hey, it isn't our fault that those things are fast, Tatsumi interjected. Izuku was slumped on the table as he groaned. I wasn't really good at stealth. I'll need to work on that if I ever go on stakeouts, Izuku thought. Well, it wasn't bad. I'd say you two did good, even though it was your first time, Negenda reassured. Leon then wrapped her arm around Tatsumi as she had a grin. I heard that you shouted bring it on, gotta say that was brave, Leon mocked. Shut up, okay, Tatsumi shouted at her. You two need work on concealing your presence, AceAkuma pointed out. Hey, we didn't know that we were going to do that kind of fishing, Tatsumi reasoned. Tatsumi looked at Izuku for backup, but saw him scribbling on his notebook or a notebook that Lubbock gave to him per his request. Izuku's famous muttering started as the three were surprised by how fast he was talking. Okay, that's the first, Leon blurted out. Negenda then coughed as it snapped Izuku out of his mumbling. Though it's good that you're taking advice, Izuku, Try to keep it inside your head when you're inciting it, she suggested. Izuku scratched his head as he chuckled. Sorry, old habits. Akame looked at the grenette with curiosity. Now then, back to the matter at hand. Leon, did you get it? Negenda asked the yellow lioness. She nodded as she pulled out a bag filled with coins. Our targets are Gamel and Ogre. They work together. Apparently Ogre takes bribes from Gamel. Gamel commits a crime and then blames it on someone else. That's what the information stated, Leon stated. Is it valid? Negenda asked. I checked it myself. They're guilty, Leon confirmed. Then as Night Raid, we accept this job, she accepted. Izuku gulped as they were about to go and kill people, though it was guilty people. Though the money smells kinda fishy, as if she was selling her body for this amount, Leon also added. Izuku widened his eyes as he clenched his fist. Those people need to be brought to justice, Izuku gritted his teeth. Negenda noticed this as she sighed. It would seem though we're low on people. It would be best to wait for the others, Akame suggested. And let those two get away scot-free? Not a chance. They could be condemning someone else for false crime too. Tatsumi stood up and countered the suggestion. Oh? Are you saying you'll take on Ogre? Negenda intrigued. We can't just let those scum walk away free, Tatsumi added. Gamel might be easy to deal with, but Ogre might be tricky, Leon added. I still think we should wait for the others, Akame still suggested. We don't have time. This is our chance to strike, Tatsumi argued. Leon, Akame, you'll go after Gamel. Tatsumi, you go after Ogre, Negenda ordered. The two widened their eyes. Are you sure, boss? It's his first time, Leon warned. If he's confident that he can do it, then I'll allow it, Negenda stated. All right, Tatsumi cheered. Still, your mission isn't complete until you report it back, Akame warned as she stared at Tatsumi. Tatsumi gulped. Izuku felt the tension in the room, but then Negenda turned to Izuku. There is also a mission for you as well, she added. Izuku turned to her. Leon, give him the information, she ordered. Leon nodded as she pulled out a map. This is a small camp that holds people that are condemned for false crimes. We already sent 2 recon scouts to survey the area. The problem is they have no anchor to lead them in and out, Leon informed. Negenda turned to Izuku. Your mission is to assist the recon scouts in rescuing the captives and safely escort them out of the camp. Izuku nodded. And watch out for the captain of the camp. He might be on par with Ogre, Leon warned. Izuku looked at the map, scanning the placement. Can I bring the map with me? Izuku asked. Negenda nodded. Use whatever you can. She then turned to everyone at the table. All right, everyone has their missions. Get to work and bring those bastards to justice. Roger, they responded. Izuku walked to his room to get his gear. Akame, however, stared at the boy as he walked off. Akame, is something the matter? Negenda asked. Akame turned around and stared at Negenda. Are you sure we should let him stay? She questioned. Negenda raised an eyebrow. Izuku? Well, I couldn't just let a Tegu user go, she responded. But he's too innocent, Akame argued. Negenda froze as she looked at Akame. The assassin had a solemn and sad look, as if she was tired of watching innocent people die. Negenda solemnly looked at her. She knew Akame was still suffering for what the Empire had done to her. Akame, the boy accepted, and I'm pretty sure that boy can handle himself. He may have held back on you, but you said he could rival the strongest people in the Empire, Negenda stated. Akame nodded as she squeezed her arm tightly. I'm just worried that we'll lose another good person. Negenda walked up to the assassin as she placed her metallic hand on her. Akame, all we can do is hope that they return. Akame nodded. With Izuku? As Izuku dressed in his hero suit, he walked back to get the map from Negenda. He walked into the kitchen, but only to see Akame at the table cleaning. She was dressed in the same clothing the night the two met. Same black trench coat, sleeveless black shirt with the white collar. Izuku then saw the map on the table. "Hey Akame," he greeted. Akame turned to him as he then froze at her gaze. Cold and stoic. The night he saw those eyes. But yet he saw darkness, a darkness that she was drowning in. "Is there something you need?" she asked. Izuku flinched as her voice snapped him out of it. I need the map over there. I'm just going to grab it and head out," Izuku answered. Akame looked at the table as she spotted the map. She grabbed it, then walked over to him. Izuku flinched as she was now in front of him. She then handed the map to him. He gently grabbed it. She then walked past him. Izuku let out a breath. "Izuku," Akame called out. Izuku jumped as he turned around, but only to see a hint of worry in her eyes. "Make sure you finish the mission," she stated. Izuku gulped and nodded. "I won't fail," he firmly answered. A few hours. In the capital, in a man that was overweight cleaned his hands as he walked down the hall. "Ah, that was a good wash. Now I'll get back to the real fun," he grinned. "How about you have some fun with us?" Before the man could do anything, he was then trapped into a choke hold as he tried to struggle until a blade was pierced into his chest, killing him in one swift motion. Akame and Leon walked out of the shadow as Akame wiped the BLD off her blade. "Well, that was easy. I wonder how Tatsumi is doing and Greenie," Leon wondered. Akame only nodded. With Izuku. As Izuku hopped from tree to tree, going to the rendezvous point that the scouts had planned, Izuku checked the map as he then looked around. "It should be around here," Izuku muttered. He kept looking around until he saw a dim light, signaling him. Izuku then dashed toward the light as he saw two people in front wearing a brown head cap with a brown jacket with a red armband. Izuku landed in front of them as the two looked at each other. "You're the new auxiliary for Night Raid?" the man asked. Izuku nodded. The two then sighed as they brought out equipment. "Good. My name is Kensei. This is Miura," the scout introduced himself and his partner. "The camp is just further ahead, but we're having trouble sneaking past the guards," Kensei reported. Izuku nodded as they headed towards the direction. As they looked out of the tree line, they spotted a small camp that was barricaded into a wooden wall that protruded spikes. Izuku scanned the front as he saw two people in front while squads of 3 were circling around the camp. They were right. The security is tight. I need to find an opening in order for them to sneak in and out with the captives, Izuku thought. He then ran through his mind, trying to find a way in. "Did you guys check the other side of the camp?" Izuku asked. The two nodded. "Yes, we checked every nook and cranny of the camp. No opening for us to get in," Miura informed him. "The only option is to do a frontal assault," Kensei suggested. Izuku shook his head. "If we do that, who knows what they will do to the captives," he argued. Izuku then rescanned the camp again as he then spotted a squad exiting out of the base with a small opening. He watched them closely as they took a piece of wood out of the wall and replaced it back on as they huddled and started to smoke. "There, the squad over there has a secret entranceway into the camp," Izuku pointed out as he pointed to the direction. The two were stunned by his observation. He was quick and observed the movements of the squads. "I'll take down the squad. I'll signal when it is clear," Izuku stated. Izuku then activated 1 for all 10% full cowling as he then rushed down the hill they were on. As Izuku rushed down as he bounced off from tree to tree, he then came close to the squad that were fooling around. Izuku took the opportunity to strike as he appeared out of the tree line. The guards just noticed him as they tried to call for backup, but Izuku was too quick for them as he slammed his feet across each of their faces, knocking them out cold. Izuku landed as he swiftly turned around to check if they were out cold. He nodded as he then started to signal the two scouts. The two rushed down the hill as they met up with Izuku. They grabbed the unconscious bodies and dragged them to the bushes, making them hidden. Izuku nodded as he looked at the wall as he then placed his hands on it as he started to lightly push on it, checking which one was loose. He then came to one that was loosely placed. He then pulled on it as he lifted the piece of wood out as he then placed it on the side. Izuku entered the small crack, but when the two started to follow him, he peeked through to check if anyone was near. He saw that they were behind a tent, then gave them the clear as he walked out and checked his surroundings. The two scouts checked the surroundings too, as they held onto small handguns they had on them. Izuku hid behind a crate as the two followed. Izuku turned them as they pulled out the map. "All right, the captives are on the east side of the camp. We'll need to traverse carefully," Kensei warned. Izuku nodded as he saw guards walk by as they were talking. Izuku then saw an alarm bell surrounded by boxes of crates. Izuku widened his eyes. "There's an alarm bell," Izuku pointed out. Kensei looked and cursed under his breath. "Shit, what now?" "We can't alert them. We'll be facing an entire army," Miura muttered. "Do one of you have a knife on you?" Izuku asked. Miura nodded as he pulled out a small knife. "All right, give it to me. I'll disarm the alarm. Once I disarm it, try to take down as many guards as you can without getting alerted, but don't kill them." "That's not our mission. It's only search and rescue," Izuku explained. The two grimly nodded. "Roger." Izuku then pulled his hoodie down, covering his face. He then dashed towards the next crate without alerting anyone. He looked to see the alarm bell was surrounded by two guards. Izuku looked around to see anything that would distract them. He saw a bottle of wine on a crate. Izuku then brought his hand out and brought it into a flicking motion. 10% Delaware Smash Air Force, he whispered as he launched a pocket of air, and the air huddled towards the bottle as it hit it, causing the bottle to crack and fall off the crate it was on, making a loud noise, causing the two guards to be alerted. "The hell was that?" one of the guards spoke up. "Must be rats or something. Let's go check it out," the other suggested. The two walked away from the alarm bell. As they went to check out the noise, Izuku swiftly dashed towards the bell. He then pulled out the knife and cut the string inside the bell. Now the bell was disarmed. Izuku grabbed the bell ringer off the ground and placed it inside his pocket. He checked if the guards were coming back, but noticed the two guards were knocked out. He noticed Kensei and Miura wave at him. He nodded as he swiftly snuck towards them. Izuku was now regrouped with them as they nodded and headed to the east side of the camp. As they arrived, they noticed 10 cages aligned together. The scouts then began to work as they checked everyone, each cage holding 3 people each. The scouts swiftly unlocked every cage. They rallied the captives and counted them. "There's 30 in total," Miura informed. "All right, let's get." "Hey, what the hell is going on?" They froze as they turned to see a guard spot them. "You aren't going." Izuku slammed the guard on the ground as the guard was now out cold, but that made too much noise. "Hey, what was that? Let's go check it out." "Hey, some of our men are knocked out, intruders." The camp then became alerted and headed towards Izuku and the others. "Shit, now what?" Kensei cursed. Izuku looked at the scouts, then at the captives. He noticed in their eyes that they were scared, terrified even. He gritted his teeth. "Hey, they're letting the captives out. Don't let them escape." Izuku didn't hesitate as he turned to see 2 guards with guns. He used 20% full cowling and slammed his heel on the ground, causing the ground to spike up as it created a stone wall. He then turned as he then swung his leg at the wall near them. Izuku created a hole in the wall big enough for the people to escape. "Go you two, escort them out of here now." He 2 scouts worked quickly as they quickly led the people out. Izuku then heard a sizzle as he swiftly turned to the wall he made as it exploded in front of him. "Captain, there," one of the guards called out. Izuku looked as he saw a bulked-up man with tied blonde hair with purple eyes. He had a scar run across his cheek. He wore an armor plate that was completely gray. He had a broadsword behind his back. "So, another revolutionary scum, huh?" he scoffed. Izuku stood ready. He was surrounded. He looked at each of them as they were ready to pounce on him. The captain grinned. "Seems you forgot one." Izuku widened his eyes as he turned to see a child no less than 5, standing there shaken. Izuku gritted his teeth. "You were going to condemn a child." The captain laughed. "So what? The weak deserve this. If they had strength, then maybe they could have lived on." Izuku widened his eyes as he glared at the captain. The guards next to the captain pulled out their rifles. Izuku then slammed his heel again, causing the ground to spike again. Izuku turned swiftly as 4 guards with swords tried to attack the child, but Izuku was faster than them as sent them flying back. The kid opened one eye as he saw Izuku. The hero turned towards the child. "You need to go. Don't worry, I'll be right behind," he reassured. The child shakingly nodded his head as he hurried out of the hole and into the forest. Izuku watched as the child ran off. Then a bullet grazed his cheek as he turned quickly to see the captain with his riflemen. Izuku dashed towards them as they tried to fire at him, but he dashed past them and sent a fist towards the rifleman and sent him into a tent, making it collapse. Izuku then jumped in the air and slammed his feet on the ground, causing the ground to crack. This caused the rifleman to lose balance. Izuku then swung his leg, landing a roundhouse kick, knocking the soldier in the air and sent him landing next to the captain. The captain groaned as he watched his men get sent flying. "Do I have to do everything myself?" he shouted as he pulled his broadsword out and charged at Izuku. Izuku then punched the last guard unconscious. He then saw in the corner of his eyes the captain as he turned only to see the captain above him with his broadsword out. Izuku then dodged to the right side as the sword slammed on the ground. Izuku stood a few feet away from him. The captain pulled his sword out and got into a stance. "I'll make sure the Emperor has your head on a pike." Izuku clenched his fist and got into his own fighting stance. "I won't allow that to happen. I'll save these people by stopping you." They then charged at each other, ready to exchange blows. In the camp, a clash could be heard as Izuku brought up his leg and slammed down the blade on the ground. Izuku then brought his left leg up, kicking the captain in the chin. The captain shrugged it off and lifted the blade up as Izuku flipped and landed a few feet away from. The captain then swung his blade sideways. Izuku jumped over him as he then launched 5 Delaware smashes at him. The captain swiftly turned around and blocked the projectiles with his blade. Izuku then landed as he then dashed towards him, leaving a trail of dust behind. He brought his leg forward as he then did a front kick midair as the captain blocked his attack barely. The captain was sent back as he rolled back. The captain then regained control as he skidded back. "I must say, you got skill for a kid who's using a tegu," the captain huffed. Izuku got into his fighting stance as they stared down at each other. Izuku then fired off Delaware smashes at the captain. He swiftly charged towards him, dodging the attacks. Izuku widened his eyes as the captain brought down his sword with full force. Izuku jumped back as he slammed the sword down, creating a dust cloud. Izuku landed as he then saw a shadow out of the dust cloud. The captain burst through and rushed him with incredible speed. Izuku jumped in the air as the man stopped and looked up. Izuku then brought his right leg up to his head as he let gravity do its work as he fell. Izuku then brought his leg down as the captain dodged to the side. Manchester smash. Izuku then smashed the ground beneath, creating a crater and rocks flew up. "Ha, that move was too obvious to predict," the captain mocked. Izuku turned to him as he smirked. "It was supposed to be." The captain widened his eyes as he then looked beneath him to see him standing on a piece of rock that was kicked up in the air by the impact of Izuku's Manchester smash. "What the?" Before he could say anything, he noticed rocks were in the air all around them. Izuku then jumped up and landed on a rock. He then bounced from one rock to another to another, to another, and another. At this point, Izuku was becoming a green blur as he bounced all around the captain. Izuku then launched towards him as he punched him and then flew past him. "Jiarug," the captain grunted. Izuku continued to repeat the process as from the outside was a green circle with lines passing inside. Izuku punched the captain around as the captain was being disoriented. Izuku then landed underneath the rock that the captain was on. Izuku launched up as he then uppercutted the guy while breaking the rock beneath him. As Izuku uppercutted him, he then flew above him and brought his leg up again as he then slammed his heel down his face, causing the captain to plummet down to the ground, creating an explosion of dust as he collided with the ground. Izuku landed a few feet away from him as he looked at the dust. But Izuku didn't relax as he saw a shadow figure out of the dust cloud. The captain rushed out as he started to swing his sword in order to hit Izuku. "You revolutionary scum," he cried. Izuku dodged the attacks as they moved around the area. "I will kill every single one of you. I condemn all of those you care about. Then I'll make you watch as I pleasure myself with the one you love. I'll enjoy your miserable face," he ranted. Izuku widened his eyes. "Every life is sacred. I won't let you kill those innocent people." "Why? What's the point in protecting the weak? They only drag you down. The weak can only cower beneath the strong. Only the strong can decide for the weak. Those who protect the weak are just weaklings," he shouted. Izuku gritted his teeth as he brought his leg up, smashing the blade into pieces. The captain gasped as he witnessed the strength of the boy. All was a flash as Izuku collided his fist into his face. "Everywhere I go in this country, people like you harm innocent people without the care in the world, thinking you have the right. You're wrong. The strong can't dictate everything. The strong have to protect the weak in order for the weak to become strong," Izuku shouted. Izuku sent the man flying back, but Izuku wasn't down as he followed him, catching up to the guy. Izuku kicked him in the air as he continued to follow. Izuku brought his fist up as they were floating up in the air. "This empire is shrouded in darkness," he muttered as for some reason AceAkuma was brought to his mind. When he saw the hint of worry in her eyes, he couldn't get it out of his mind. He gritted his teeth and then glared at the man. "I'll smash that darkness." Izuku slammed his fist down onto the man as he then plummeted to the ground again, creating a crater beneath the beaten man. Izuku landed in front of him as the man couldn't get up anymore. "You and your people won't hurt people as long as I'm here," Izuku declared. Izuku walked away as he headed for the hole, but then he heard a sound behind him. Izuku swiftly turned, but only to see what looked to be a man with a kitsune mask that wore a black cloak, disclosing anything that he had skin. Izuku widened his eyes at the sudden appearance. He then looked down at the captain, only to see the man's throat cut. Izuku widened his eyes. Izuku launched at him as he swung his leg, creating a massive wind force towards him. The man disappeared in the darkness as he reappeared on top of a watchtower. "Oh, Izuku Midoriya, I'm not your enemy," the man spoke up. Izuku widened his eyes. "How do you know me?" "That time will come soon, until we meet again," the man waved as he then vanished into a dark portal behind him. Izuku stared at the watchtower, wondering who that man was. Izuku didn't have time as he needed to check on the scouts and the captives. He turned and rushed towards the hole as he exited the camp. As he then saw footprints leading into the forest, Izuku followed the path. As he walked further into the forest, he could hear whispering. "Kensei? Miura?" he called out. "Izuku? Is that you?" Kensei's voice could be heard. "Yeah, it's me. It's safe now." The two then walked out as the captives followed them out of a bush. Izuku then noticed the kid was back with his family. Izuku sighed as he then relaxed a bit. "We should head further into the forest so they don't catch up to us," Izuku suggested. "That's a good idea." A few minutes later, as they made sure they were far away from the camp, Izuku made sure he stayed behind the group to make sure no one followed. Izuku walked as the captives in front of him stared at him. Izuku tilted his head to the side. They then turned swiftly ahead as if they were scared of him. Izuku frowned as he didn't mean to be scary to them. "We're here. There's the carriage," Kensei called out. Izuku could see 2 carriage carts parked near the edge of a path. "All right, everyone get in. We'll escort you back to the revolutionary camp where you'll get treatment over there." They seemed hesitant as they were just in the camp earlier. Izuku frowned as he walked in front of them. "Don't worry, all of you are safe now. They won't harm you," Izuku tried to reassure them. "And how do you know that? I doubt they'll treat us any differently," one of the captives spoke up as he seemed frightened. Izuku frowned, but then firmly looked at them and placed his hand on his chest. "Because I am here." Everyone was surprised by his answer. "They won't hurt you because they didn't hurt me either. They only wanted to save you from being condemned with false accusations. They won't hurt you, I promise." Izuku spoke with his heart. The captives were stunned by his words as they started to converse. They then nodded as they felt safe with Izuku's words. Izuku sighed as he turned towards the scouts. "There shouldn't be any problems, right?" he asked. The two shook their heads. "Yep, plus I'd rather keep my head instead of taking a kick from you," Kensei grimaced. Izuku chuckled. He then felt a tug on his leg as he turned to see the same 5-year-old boy. Sir, what's your name?" the child asked. "Izuku Midoriya," he answered. The child struggled. Izuku smiled. "If that's too hard, then just call me Deku." The boy then widened his eyes as it started to sparkle. "Okay, thank you." Izuku smiled as he got up, but then, "Thank you, Deku, you saved us." Izuku looked forward, only to see the people in front of him start to thank him as they entered the carriages. They wore faint smiles, but it was still there. They were gaining their hopes again. Izuku smiled and waved. Izuku turned towards the two. "I should get going now." Kensei and Miura nodded. "Say hi to Negenda for us." Izuku nodded as he activated 8% full cowling and dashed off. An hour later. Izuku dashed from tree to tree as he headed towards where the base was located. He thought, but he felt he was completely lost. "Crap, did I take a wrong turn?" Izuku questioned. Then Izuku heard rustling as he then turned towards the noise. Izuku stood ready as the rustling continued. Then the figure dropped down from the tree. Izuku was ready to pounce, but then noticed the familiar deep black hair. "Akame?" Izuku questioned. Akame then looked up with her crimson-red eyes as she stood up. "You were taking too long, so I went to look for you," she stated. Izuku scratched his head. "Sorry, there was a hold-up." Akame then noticed a scratch on his cheek as it was still fresh with BLD. "Your face, it's bleeding," she pointed out. Izuku removed his glove as he felt the BLD on his cheek. "Oh, it's just a graze, I'll put on a bandage later." Akame walked towards him as she was now inches away from his face. Izuku widened his eyes as his cheeks started to flush red. She placed her hand on his cheek, checking the cut. Izuku froze as he was now completely red. Izuku stared into her eyes. Her eyes captured his gaze completely as they were so stunning to him. Akame looked directly at his eyes as well as it reminded her of a bright emerald. She then looked at his arm bracers as she then started to undo them. Izuku tilted his head until it happened so fast as Akame stripped him down from his chest to his legs. "Ah, Akame, what are you?" He couldn't finish as he was now completely naked, only wearing his boxers. She examined his body, checking every nook and cranny. Izuku stood frozen still as he couldn't process what just happened. Akame then appeared in front of him, as she stared at him with a poker face. Izuku wondered what she was doing. Thank goodness. Izuku widened his eyes as he witnessed her actually smiling since he met her. Izuku's heart skipped a beat as soon as he saw her smile. It was so gentle and kind, compared to her stoic expression. Izuku didn't think she was capable of smiling, but this broke his expectations. What's worse was that Izuku became redder as soon as she started to smile. "I witnessed people die from poison because they were too proud of what they accomplished. It's good that you survived," she happily stated. Yeah," Izuku uttered. He was still amazed by her smile. He knew she was beautiful, but her smile made him feel like it was light itself. Izuku then realized why she had a hint of worry in her eyes before he embarked on his mission. "Akame, when we talked at the dining table, Were you worried that I wouldn't make it? He asked. Akame nodded as she looked down. I've lost so many comrades. I'm afraid that I'll lose people I care about in an instant, but when I saw you, you're far too innocent to be in this cruel world. I was worried that we'd lose a good person like yourself. Izuku widened his eyes as he clenched his fist. He knew she had darkness shrouded around her, but he didn't know it was this deep. Who knows what she also lost? Thank you for worrying, Akame, but I won't die, Izuku firmly said. Akame widened her eyes as she looked at him, his eyes filled with determination. I made a promise that I'll be the greatest hero, so until then I won't die. I can't, Izuku stated. Akame gently smiled again. Then let's do our best to keep living on, she brought her hand out. Izuku smiled at her. Yeah, I promise I'll protect you all. Akame blushed a bit as soon as she saw his kind smile. But either way she was happy that she got along with Izuku. Let's head back to the base then, shall we? Akame suggested. Yeah, but first let me put back on my clothes, Izuku shyly replied. Akame nodded. Back at the night raid base, as Akame and Izuku returned to the base, they chatted on the way back, talking about how they were taught to fight and what favorite things they liked. They didn't go into each other's past out of respect for the other. But on that day Izuku and Akame became friends. But deep down Akame also felt something else inside as well. At the base Tatsumi and Leon waited for them as Akame did the same inspection process to Tatsumi. Good job, both of you on your first mission, Negenda complimented. Leon then wrapped her arms around the two. Gotta say that was quite the work you did. Izuku just chuckled as Tatsumi was annoyed by Leon's action. Now that you finished training with Akame, I will now assign you new trainers, Negenda announced. Tatsumi and Izuku looked at her as Negenda smirked. Izuku, you'll be training under Leon, Izuku flinched as he turned his head towards her. Don't worry, I won't bite yet, she slurred. Izuku shivered as she said that. Tatsumi, you'll be training under Main. What? He exclaimed. Somewhere far away where the 4 remaining members of Night Raid are, Main shivered as she turned. I got a bad feeling about this. Back to the base where Tatsumi is trying his hardest not to rant off. Oof, good luck Tatsumi, you're going to need it, Leon chuckled. Why the hell do I have to train under her? Tatsumi groaned. All right, that's it for tonight. Everyone good job, Negenda complimented again. Everyone left the room except for Izuku as he remained. Izuku, is there something wrong? Negenda asked. Izuku looked down, then at her. On my mission, after I took down the captain, another person appeared, Izuku told her. Negenda stopped what she was doing. What did he look like? She questioned him. He wore all black and had a kitsune mask on, he explained to her. Negenda rubbed her chin. A kitsune mask? He also had this weird dark power that allowed him to teleport or vanish, Izuku continued. Negenda nodded. Can't say I heard of a Tegu with that kind of ability. Negenda looked at Izuku. Anything else? Izuku nodded. He also appeared to know me somehow, he answered. Negenda widened her eyes. Was he the one who kidnapped you? Izuku shook his head. No, he wore a brown trench coat. This guy wore all black. It couldn't be. Izuku stopped as he remembered the words of the man who kidnapped him. He told me to get someone, but all I see is 2 children. Izuku remembered those exact words. Was he the one who told him to kidnap me? Izuku? Izuku snapped out of it as he shook his head. Sorry, just overthinking. Well, it's been a long day. Go take a rest. You'll be training with Leon, she stated. Izuku nodded as he headed out of the room. As Izuku walked to his room, he saw Akame in front of his door. Akame? Akame turned to him. Izuku, can we talk? She asked. Izuku tilted his head as he looked at Akame. Sure. They both walked into his room as Izuku sat on the bed. Akame sat beside him. It was quiet for a while. Izuku started to fidget as the awkward silence was killing him. So what did you want to talk about? Izuku asked. Akame turned to him as she still had the stoic expression. "Are you okay?" she asked. Izuku was surprised by her question. "Yeah, I'm okay. Why do you ask?" "I meant about your backlash of your tegu," she clarified. "Oh, yeah, I didn't push myself too hard, so no straining on my body yet," Izuku reassured. Akame looked at him as she grabbed his right hand. Izuku then flinched a bit as she traced her fingers on his scarred hand. "You shouldn't push yourself too hard, Izuku, or you won't be able to perform well." Akame looked at him with the same worried look. Izuku widened his eyes as he then smiled at her. "Don't worry, Akame. I won't push myself too hard." Akame gently smiled at the hero as she looked into his emerald eyes. Izuku then frowned. "But—" Akame then tilted her head. "What?" she asked. Izuku then looked at her firmly. "If any one of you are in danger, I won't hesitate to use everything I got in order to save you," he declared. Akame widened her eyes as she stared at him. Izuku looked at her with drive, determined to save anyone, even if he had to risk his life in order to so. Akame could only nod as Izuku smiled at her. What a strange guy, Akame thought as she returned with her own smile as well. It had been a few days after Izuku's and Tatsumi's first missions. At the night raid base, not far from there is a small area filled with lush green grassy fields with rocks protruding out of the ground. There is a hill that is steep and can spot a green-headed boy carrying giant rocks over his shoulders as he slowly jogs up the hill. Izuku has been doing this since the dawn. Leon woke him up early in the morning to do some morning exercise. What Izuku didn't know was that he was going to be running up and down carrying rocks that weighed approximately 80 pounds. Leon told him to carry 2 rocks over his shoulder and run up and down the hill. He had been doing this for 5 hours already and was gasping for air. "This reminds me of the time when I trained for the entrance exam at UA," Izuku thought to himself as he was approaching the top, where Leon was supervising him. As he reached the top, he then stopped to catch his breath. Izuku felt his legs and arms aching as his throat was dry, desperately in need of water. Leon walked towards him as she clapped her hands. "Good job, that concludes training for today," she stated as Izuku dropped the rocks off of his shoulders. He then fell down and laid on the grass as he was heavily breathing for air. As he laid there, he stared up into the sky as he watched the clouds slowly moving across the sky. He couldn't imagine that he was in another world. He wondered how his classmates were doing. After all, he disappeared right in front of them. Izuku closed his eyes as he felt the wind gently breeze by him. He opened them again as he reminisced about what happened back at the camp. How people were never safe from this empire. Izuku knew he had to return home, but he couldn't just leave people, desperately pleading for help. He knows it isn't his business, but meddling when you don't need to is the essence of a hero. He remembered the words that came out of All Might's mouth, the words that allowed him to push forward. "Hey Greenie, let's head back to the base. Bet breakfast is ready," Leon called out. Izuku got up as he felt the soreness kick in as he stretched a bit. He then followed Leon back to the base as Leon looked back at the young hero. She noticed that the boy was in deep thought. She faced forward as she placed her hands behind her hind as she looked up to the sky. Wonder what's he thinking. The base. Meanwhile, Tatsumi was tasked to wake Main up since he was now training under her. As Tatsumi made a mistake when entering a girl's room. He forgot to knock. "Main, when are you going to key?" Tatsumi stopped as he fully opened the door. Main, now frozen as they both stared at each other for a second. Main was revealed to be in her bra. Everything happened so fast. Now there is a hole in the building. "Hey, watch where you're shooting, that thing you could have killed me," Tatsumi shouted at her as he barely dodged the shot from Pumpkin. "Well, you shouldn't have, you pervert," she exclaimed as she had her rifle locked and loaded. "Well, it's your fault for sleeping this late." Tatsumi slowly realized that Main was about to fire another shot. "Well, haven't you heard of knocking?" she screamed as she fired another round. As Izuku and Leon walked back to the base, they saw shots firing out of the base. Izuku was now alarmed. Is it an intruder? Asked Izuku as Leon kept walking. It's probably just Main. Don't worry about it, she reassured him. Izuku continued to follow Leon. She then started to think of something to entertain them, well, mostly her. Hey Greenie, she got Izuku's attention as he looked at her. What's up? He asked. Leon turned around. So how was your first mission? She asked. Izuku then looked at her. Well, I'm glad that I got the captives out of there safely, he responded. Leon nodded. I wish I could have been there to see. I haven't really seen you fight, she sighed as Izuku looked at her confusingly. But didn't I defend myself against AceAkuma when we first met? He reminded her. Leon then put her finger on her chin. Oh yeah, well I actually want to spar with you. Maybe I should put that in the training schedule I have for you, she suggested as Izuku's sweat dropped. They then reached the building and headed inside. Izuku went to his room to change into comfortable clothing. He had a gray shirt and black pants with his classic red shoes. He walked into the kitchen to see Leon, Lubbock, Bulat, and AceAkuma eating breakfast. Ah, there you are. Your bowl is right there, Bulat stated as he pointed towards his bowl. Izuku then looked in the direction. His seat was right next to AceAkuma. He went to sit down as he gripped his chopstick and dug into his meal. AceAkuma kept looking at him as he continued to eat. Ever since his first mission, AceAkuma and Izuku had been talking more frequently as they discussed mostly training and how to deal with the flashback of his quirk. But Leon noticed something odd about AceAkuma as whenever Izuku was out training or exercising, Leon would catch her staring at him for quite some time before she would go do her usual stuff. AceAkuma kept biting into her meat but would occasionally glance at Izuku. Izuku then caught her looking at him through the corner of his eyes. He looked at her as AceAkuma jumped at his sudden gaze. Is there something wrong, AceAkuma? He asked. AceAkuma shook her head as she continued eating her meat. Izuku was confused but didn't think of it too much as he continued his meal. Leon was looking at AceAkuma across the table. Is she? No, I think it's something else. But it could be, Leon thought as Main and Tatsumi walked into the kitchen. Oh hell, what happened to you? Lubbock asked as Tatsumi had a few burnt marks on his face. Don't ask, as he walked towards Izuku as he sat down next to him. Izuku looked at Tatsumi, worried for his friend. You all right, Tatsumi? Izuku asked as Tatsumi turned towards him. I'll live, I hope, he muttered the last part. He was about to go get something to eat, but then, Come on, newbie, let's go, Main exclaimed as he stopped and groaned. He slouched over and begrudgingly walked towards Main. I hope nothing bad happens to him, Izuku thought to himself. Izuku then proceeded to finish his bowl. He got up and placed his finished bowl in the sink. Negenda walked in as she looked at the team. HM? Where's Shiel? She asked. She's still asleep, AceAkuma responded. Negenda sighed as she looked at Izuku. I got an assignment for you. Come with me. I'll debrief you the details, she informed him as Izuku nodded and followed right behind her. They headed out of the kitchen as the team watched them. Once they were out of the kitchen, Lubbock started to speak. Wonder what Negenda-san needs him for, he asked as Leon looked at him. What worried he might steal her, she grinned as Lubbock widened his eyes. Impossible, it can't be, he spoke with disbelief. Leon started to laugh. I'm just joking, Loba, as he looked at her angrily. Come on, niece, and you can't just tease me like that, Lubbock cried out as Leon laughed at him. She stopped when she saw AceAkuma just looking at her meat, not taking a single bite out of it. AceAkuma, you all right? Leon asked as AceAkuma looked up at her. She nodded to reassure Leon. But Leon was not convinced as she watched AceAkuma finish her plate and proceed to clean the dishes as everyone finished up. Meanwhile, Negenda and Izuku were in Negenda's office. So what's the assignment? Izuku asked as Negenda took a whiff of her cigar. I want you to investigate something for me, she informed him as he raised an eyebrow. One of my scouts have reported that there was a purple light outside of the capital. They say it's a danger beast, but we can't be sure, she continued explaining. Izuku then pieced together why she wanted Jim to investigate this matter. You want me to make sure it's not a secret weapon that the Empire is making, he pieced together as she nodded. Also to see if they didn't discover a lost Tegu. Tegu? I still don't know what those are, Izuku thought to himself. What are Tegu anyways? He asked as Negenda looked at him. Tegus are weapons that were built 1,000 years ago. They have the power to match an entire army, she explained. Izuku widened his eyes. So does everyone have Tegus here? Izuku asked. Negenda nodded. Each one with different abilities, Negenda stated as she looked at him. She found Izuku pull out a notebook out of nowhere. Sotherebasiele weapons with powers with each different in Aquabalites, Izuku muttered as he jotted down the information that she gave him. So that's why he asked Lubbock if he had a notebook, she muttered to herself. She cleared her throat to get his attention. Izuku jumped as he closed his notebook. As I was saying, I want you to head towards the reported site and find out what it is, she ordered as Izuku nodded. Be careful, who knows what could be out there. After debriefing Izuku of the mission, Negenda also got reports of the Prime Minister relative capturing women and raping them. She waited for Main and Tatsumi to return to the base to get the team to finish the mission together. Negenda looked at the letters she received from her scouts as she continued doing her paperwork. Izuku arrived at the location where they saw a purple light in the nearby forest of the Empire. Izuku headed there as it was dusk. The sky was turning nightfall, so Izuku had to finish this before the danger beast started to pounce on him. He jumped from tree to tree, checking the area surrounding him as he kept looking around. After a few hours of surveying the area, he decided there were no signs of activity. He looked at the sky as it was already dark. The only light was the moon. As he was about to head out, he heard a scream behind him as he swiftly turned and jumped towards the direction. As he approached the screams, they kept getting louder and louder. He could tell he was getting close. He arrived and found danger beasts in a half circle as they surrounded something as a figure was back against a stone wall. Izuku didn't waste time as he boosted himself off the tree and planted his feet on the stone wall and lunged downwards at the danger beasts surrounding the figure. He lifted his right leg up ready to attack. Manchester smash! He shouted as his heels collided with ground as it broke and erupted, leaving the beasts stunned and lost balance on their footing. He quickly turned around and grabbed the figure and boosted out of the area. He jumped through the forest as he saw the path leading towards the capital. But then out of the corner of his eyes a claw was coming down on him. He swiftly dodged it and landed on a tree. He looked at the beast that attacked him. It was a wolf that had spikes protruding out of his back. This wasn't what I expected, Izuku thought to himself as he jumped away from the beast as it bites down on the tree branch where he used to stand. Izuku then jumped over the beast and reeled his right leg back. Sink! Louis smash! He shouted as he planted his feet on the top of the wolf's head as it hit the ground. After he did that, he got out of the forest as quickly as possible. Once he was a safe distance away from the forest, he put the figure down. Well, that was unexpected, he muttered to himself. He was in thought until he realized he didn't know what he just saved as he was about to turn around. He heard a familiar voice. It was soft and surprised. The voice was a 7-year-old girl's voice, but not just any 7-year-old girl. This one he recognized instantly. The innocent girl asked as he turned around to see a 7-year-old girl with white hair and little horn protruding out of the right side of her forehead. She wore a red dress with white shirt under it. Izuku couldn't believe his eyes as he looked at the girl he saved. Eri, he exclaimed as the girl now known as Eri now has appeared into this dark, corrupt world. Izuku stood there as he waited outside of the door of the night raid base. What should I do? I can't leave Eri to the Revolutionary Army, but I can't leave her here too, Izuku thought as Eri held onto his hand, scared of the unknown area that she had arrived. Few hours ago. Izuku looked at Eri as she hugged him. I thought I might never see you again, Deku-san, Eri cried into his legs as he started to rub her head. He grabbed her shoulder and made her look at him. Eri, how did you get here? Izuku asked her as she looked at him. There was a purple light outside of the building, so I went to find what it was, and then I'm here, she explained. There was another portal to this place, Izuku exclaimed in his mind. Is the portal still there? He asked as Eri shook her head. Izuku then sighed. He looked around as it was already dark. They needed to get out of there before danger beasts start to appear. Present. Izuku was now stuck as he debated whether to introduce Eri to the team, but then he'll have to explain the situation. He took a deep breath and walked in. But it appears luck was on his side as nobody seemed home until Negenda walked out of the kitchen. "Oh, you're back. Did you find something?" She slowly looked at the white-haired girl behind Izuku as he smiled. "I did find something, but it's not a weapon or a tegu," he explained as Negenda looked at him. "I can tell. Come with me to the conference room," as she gestured to the two to follow her. When they entered, they got comfortable and Negenda was now sitting at her chair. "All right, now explain why you have a little girl with you," she stated as she gazed at him. Izuku, on the other hand, was sweating bullets. He had to come up with something that would be believable. Well, you see, this was the evidence of the purple light that your scouts saw," Izuku explained as Negenda looked at him, then at Eri. Eri then proceeded to hide behind Izuku's leg as she peeked out to look at her. Negenda sighed as she looked at Izuku. "There seems to be something more between you two," she claimed. Izuku gulped as he was now freaking out inside his head. "She's a close relative back where I come from. Apparently she was teleported here like I was," Izuku explained as Negenda intently listened. She sighed. "All right, I'll believe it," she concluded as Izuku sighed a relief. "But one day you are going to have to tell the truth about yourself, whether you like it or not," she warned him. Izuku nodded as he was now conflicted on whether he should tell it right now or not. "Also, how are you going to explain this to the team?" Negenda added. Izuku jumped. Now he has to deal with the rest of the team. "I'll figure something out," he stated as he looked at the ground. Negenda then turned her head towards Eri as Eri now shook at her sudden gaze. "What's your name, little one?" she asked as Eri was hesitant and looked up at Izuku. He nodded and smiled at her. "Eri," she meekly replied. Negenda smiled and nodded. "Hello, Eri. My name is Negenda. Nice to meet you," she greeted her as Eri smiled a bit at her. As Negenda got up from her seat, the door to the conference room opened, revealing the whole team. "Oh, hey, Greenie's back," Leone slowly spoke as she spotted Eri. "HM, what's up, Leone?" Maine spoke up until she saw what she was looking at. Eri got frightened at the new people that she ran behind Izuku's leg and hid again. Izuku, what's with the kid?" Tatsumi was the first to break the silence. Well, you see," Izuku looked at Eri as she was hiding behind him. "This is a close relative of mine, and apparently she got kidnapped here," Izuku explained to them as they had suspicion written on their face, well, except for Tatsumi. "You know we're not babysitters, right?" Maine blurted out. She crossed her arms as she stared at Izuku. "I know I'll take care of her so you don't have to worry about it being a problem," Izuku reassured her. "More importantly, she's a mess. We should get her cleaned up." Leone interrupted the tension as she had stars in her eyes as she gazed at Eri. Eri, on the other hand, was scared as she kept herself near Izuku. "Deku-san, who are these people?" Eri meekly asked as she looked up at him. "These are my comrades I met when I came here," Izuku answered as she looked at everyone, absorbing their looks and features. "What's happening?" Shiel asked as Maine explained to her the situation. But as usual, Shiel was still confused by the situation. "Are you guys just gonna stand there or introduce yourselves?" Negenda jumped in as everyone looked at her. "Wait, boss, are we seriously letting this little girl in here?" Maine asked as Negenda looked at her. "I approved of it, so it's fine as long as Izuku takes care of her. She's his responsibility," she explained. Izuku sighed as everyone nodded. "All right, I'll go first," Leone exclaimed as she knelt down in front of Eri. Eri took a step back at how fast she knelt down. "My name's Leone, little one. What's yours?" Leone grinned. Eri was not used to new people yet, so she was kinda scared of them. "Leone, you're scaring her," Maine shouted at her. "What? No, I'm not," she argued. "You kinda are," Lubbock shot back. Tatsumi stepped forward. "Hi, I'm Tatsumi. Nice to meet you," he greeted as Eri looked at him and slightly nodded, still behind Izuku's leg. Sorry, she's just shy around new people, Izuku stated. Tatsumi shook his head. It's all right. It takes time to get to know people, he reassured Izuku. Bulat then walked forward. Hello, little one, name's Bulat, but you can call me bro or handsome. Izuku's sweat dropped at the nicknames. Eri looked at him as she slightly nodded to him as well. Shiel was next as she walked towards Eri. Hi, I'm Shiel, it's a pleasure to meet you, Shiel greeted as she took a step back. Main then walked forward. My name's Main, she greeted her as she looked to the side. Eri was confused on why she was looking the other way. Lubbock then stepped forward as he pointed his thumb towards him. The name's Lubbock, kid, nice to meet you, he greeted her as he smiled at her to ease her. It worked but slightly. Then Akame approached her. Eri looked up at her as Akame kneeled down to her. Akame stared at her and so did Eri as they looked at each other for a couple of minutes until Eri started to feel uncomfortable at her gaze. Akame then reached her hand out as Eri then looked at her hand. My name is Akame. What's yours? Akame asked her, but she did it with a kind and gentle voice. Eri's tension on her whole body started to relax as Izuku felt her hands on his legs start to loosen. Eri put her right hand on Akame's hand as she looked at her. Eri, she finally spoke. Akame then smiled at her. It's nice to meet you, Eri, Akame greeted her. Eri then slightly smiled at her. Now that introductions are out of the way, how about let's get her cleaned up, Magenta stated. Izuku nodded as he was about to take Eri to the bathing area, until he realized something. Wait, what are we going to do about the clothing, Izuku thought. Wait, hold on, you guys don't have children's-size clothing, do you? Izuku asked as everyone froze. Now we have a problem, Lubbock blurted as Leon chopped his head. We can just wash her clothes while she's in the baths, Main suggested. That could work, Tatsumi agreed. All right, then it's settled. Girls, you'll help Eri with washing her clothes and bathing her. Boys, prepare a meal for her, Magenta ordered. Roger, everyone complied. Akame then held her hand out to Eri. Come on, I'll show you where the bathing area is, she stated as Eri looked at Izuku. He nodded at her as she nodded back and held Akame's hand and walked with her. Tatsumi then approached Izuku. So what does she usually like? He asked as Izuku put his hand over his mouth, thinking about what she usually eats. Well, she likes to eat apples or something sweet, Izuku informed Tatsumi. He nodded. Well, there's a start, Tatsumi stated as both Izuku and Tatsumi walked towards the kitchen while Lubbock and Bulat followed behind. Meanwhile, with the girls, Akame was leading Eri to the bathing area as the three others were following behind. You know what I just realized, Leon blurted out as all of them looked at her. Eri has similar eye color as Akame, she stated as Main looked at Eri then Akame. You're right, they do, Main agreed. Eri looked up at Akame as they kept walking. They soon arrived at the bathing area. Akame and Leon helped Eri get cleaned up as Main and Shiel went to get her clothes washed. You think Main is gonna be all right? Leon asked as Akame was scrubbing Eri's hair. Why do you ask? Akame looked at her confusingly. I mean, last time Shiel tried to do laundry, she almost drowned Main, Leon explained. Well, it depends if Main is going to do it alone or if she asks for help from her, Akame explained as Leon nodded. Eri then tapped Akame as she turned towards her. I'm done, Eri said as she was now rinsed. Akame then helped her apply soap to her hair. Leon sat there watching the two as Akame applied soap to Eri's hair. You know, Akame, you look like a mother bathing her child, Leon blurted out as Akame stopped and looked at her. So did Eri. What do you mean? Akame asked. Eri also looked at her confusingly but stayed quiet. Leon grinned. Oh, nothing, just ignore what I said. Leon brushed her off as Akame kept her eyes on her best friend before going back to help Eri. Kitchen. Izuku and Tatsumi were preparing a meal for Eri. So we can add apples to her dessert, Tatsumi said as Izuku nodded. Yeah, that'll be good for now. All that's left is to make her dinner, Izuku said. All of this was going while Lubbock was sitting at the table with Bulat watching them. Hey Izuku, Lubbock called out. Izuku looked at him as he was prepping the ingredients. Why does Eri have a horn on the right side of her forehead? Lubbock asked. Izuku then realized he forgot to explain that to them as well. I don't know, she was born with it, Izuku answered him. Is that all? Lubbock questioned more. Izuku nodded. Lubbock looked at him for a second. Hey Lubba, it's fine, she's just a child, I'm pretty sure wherever she got that from. She'll explain it to us later, Bilat reassured him. Izuku then continued to prepare the ingredients. After they finished Eri's plate, Neigenda walked and told them to make dinner for the team. Tatsumi groaned as they got more ingredients out and started to cook for the team. After about an hour, the girls returned with Eri as her clothes were now clean. The table was set with food and plates as Bilat and Lubbock helped set the table. All right, let's dig in, Leon exclaimed as everyone now started to devour their dinner. Izuku was seated next to Eri as she ate her meal. Izuku looked at Eri as she stopped eating. Eri? What's wrong? He asked as Eri seemed to look at the seated person next to her. He followed her gaze as he spotted Akame eating a huge plate of meat. Izuku then sweat dropped. Oh, now I see what wrong. It's all right, Eri, you get used to it, Leon reassured her as Akame finished her plate in seconds. Izuku looked at the table as he sees Tatsumi, Lubbock, Shiel, and Main talking to each other as occasionally Bilat and Neigenda would jump in. This atmosphere is friendly and joyful, not what you expect from a group of assassins. Occasionally you would see Main start mocking Tatsumi as Tatsumi would usually retaliate. The rest of the group would start to laugh at the pair's antics. Usually you wouldn't expect a group of assassins to act like this. But to Izuku, this brings nostalgia. Izuku's POV. I looked at the group of assassins as they reminded me of my classmates. Weird but comfortable to be around with. As much as I wanted to go back to my world, I can't just leave these people. They're kind and caring like Class 1A. The people here are cruel and greedy, but some of them, like these guys, are the people that make this world different. I looked at the group of assassins. Each and every one of them have their own story to tell. They must have gone through so much to be where they are now, and yet here they are smiling and laughing. Times like these moments are calming and relaxing. Seeing these people spend their time while they still have it makes me want to protect the smiles and memories they forged together. I may be from another world, but what kind of hero abandons the people's happiness and cherished memories? It's a hero's job to become a beacon of hope. So, whatever it takes, I'll reforge the light that has been dismantled from this world. Whatever it takes. Meanwhile, third POV. As the night filled the streets, a man in a dark alley stared at a wanted poster. His face then shifted into a crazed smile. Splendid, splendid. This city is full of dangerous people, the man exclaimed. Hey, what are you doing here? A guard shouted as he had another with him. Don't move, the other guard ordered. The man slightly turned his head, revealing his crazed eyes. The guards couldn't do anything as their heads flew off their bodies as the crazed man walked past them. This is going to be fun, the man happily exclaimed. At the dead of night there laid a body without a head in the middle of the dark streets as a man is seen holding a woman by the neck. Please let me go, the woman exclaimed. No can do, miss. Haven't your parents told you not to play during the night? The man said. The woman gasped in fear. Please, I'll do anything, she pleaded as the man considered her offer. Is that so? Well, I'm a bit of a talker, so how about we chat for a bit? The man stated. Yes, I'll talk, the woman cried as she thought she was about to be free. Then how does it feel being a head without a body? The man exclaimed. Huh? The woman couldn't think about what just happened as her body plopped to the floor, but her head remained up as the man held her head. Splendid, splendid. I can't get enough of this, he exclaimed as his face was converted to a wicked grin. The man shouted into the sky as his face was filled with glee. I must say you are one crazy maniac, a voice called out as the man turned around to see a man with a mask that looked like a fox mask, and he was wearing a black suit and tie. Oh, another victim. Splendid, the man happily exclaimed as he pulled his hidden blades out of both hands. The masked man held his hand up. Oh, don't worry, even if you tried to kill me, you'll be dead before you could lay a finger, the masked man taunted. The crazed man dashed forward and tried to cut him, but the masked man vanished into the shadows. "Well, it's not like you'll live anyway," the masked man muttered as he vanished in the shadows. Night Raid Base. Izuku and Tatsumi were sparring against Bulat. Tatsumi charged at him with his wooden blade as he did a downward cut towards his head, but Bulat intercepted it with a block of his polearm. He then rotated his polearm where Tatsumi's blade was brushed to the side. Bulat used that opening to use the other end of his polearm to hit Tatsumi's left side. But before he could do that, Izuku ran up to him and held his arms up to block the attack. As soon as it hit Izuku's arms, he grabbed the end of the polearm. Tatsumi used that opportunity to sweep under Bulat and tried to jab him with the wooden blade from behind. Bulat then used his strength to throw Izuku off of the polearm's end as Izuku was flung across the training field as Bulat parried Tatsumi's attack. Izuku got back up and charged at Bulat. Izuku was now closing in on Bulat and Tatsumi tried to keep Bulat's attention on him, but he swung his weapon to the side so fast that Tatsumi was launched. Bulat turned towards Izuku as he was now ready for him. Izuku kept charging at him as Bulat changed the position of his polearm to his side. Izuku widened his eyes as Bulat did a side slash. On instinct, Izuku ducked under the attack and slid under Bulat's legs as Izuku repositioned himself for a kick to his ribs. As his kick landed, but it looked as if Bulat didn't feel anything. That was a good strategy, but what if your opponent was able to withstand that? What then? Bulat asked as he spun his polearm and swung at Izuku. Izuku brought his arms up to block it. As soon as it hit his arms, Izuku was sent flying like Tatsumi. Tatsumi and Izuku were now on the ground laying there, breathing heavily. "That was a good workout, you guys," Bulat complimented them. Tatsumi lifted himself up. "Geez, Aniki, you sent both of us flying," Tatsumi stated as Bulat laughed out loud. "Ha ha ha. Oh, come on, you have to be prepared for heavy hitters like me," he explained. Izuku and Tatsumi both got up as they sat on the ground catching their breaths. "Izuku," Bulat called out. Izuku looked up at him. "You're a quick thinker. It's good for battles that come unexpected. But what you lack is raw strength and a quick way to knock out an enemy," Bulat lectured. "You're used to your Tega's strength, so maybe in the future try to work on your strength alone. Build up your muscles and maybe one day you can master your Tegu's full potential," Bulat motivated him as Izuku widened his eyes. "He's right. All this time I've been training with one for all and shoot style, that I haven't picked up any advanced combat experience," Izuku muttered to himself. "What I need is a more proficient way to bring down my enemies without using one for all sometimes," Izuku continued to mutter to himself as he thought of ways to improve his techniques even more. Bukat stared at him as the three words popped up in his mind. "One for all?" Bulat questioned in his mind. "Is that his Tegus name?" Bulat thought about Izuku's words. Bulat stared at Izuku. "I might have to tell the boss about this soon," Tatsumi then interrupted Izuku's coherent muttering as he chopped his head. "Oh, what was that for?" Izuku asked as Tatsumi snickered. "You need to stop putting too much thought into things," Tatsumi replied. "Sorry, it's a habit I picked up when I was growing up," Izuku smiled as Tatsumi shook his head. While this was happening, Akame walked by with an apron and Eri at her side. "Tatsumi, come to the kitchen. We're making breakfast," Akame called him out. "All right, I'll be there," Tatsumi replied. Eri walked up to Izuku. "Are you okay, Deku-san?" Eri looked at him worried as he had scratches and dirt on his face. Izuku gave her a reassuring smile. "I'll be fine, don't worry," he reassured her. "Eri, you coming along?" Akame called out as Eri turned towards her. "See coming," Eri replied. Eri then proceeded to run up to Akame and walked with her to the kitchen. After the team was introduced to Eri herself was always with Izuku sometimes, but lately Eri had been following Akame around. At first Akame tried to find Izuku and put the girl on Izuku since he was responsible for her. But Eri kept following Akame to the point where Akame didn't mind at all as Akame sometimes took Eri with her to hunt or fish. "Shall we continue training?" Bulat suggested as Izuku nodded. as Izuku got into his fighting stance and charged at Bulat. Few hours later. After training with Bulat, Izuku had to bandage his right cheek as he took a blow from Bulat's polearm. Izuku walked into the kitchen to see breakfast was made. He spots Leon and Tatsumi fully bloated. Well, Tatsumi at least. Eri was seated next to Akame as she ate her breakfast. Izuku noticed 2 empty bowls right next to Eri. Izuku raised his eyebrows as he was confused on why there were 2 empty bowls on the table. "Why are there 2 empty bowls on the table?" Izuku asked as Tatsumi looked at him as if he should already know the answer. Izuku then pieced it together and looked at Akame. "Never mind," Izuku sighed. He was about to go to the kitchen to find some food to eat, but Eri stopped him. "Deku-san, your bowl is there," Eri pointed out towards the counter next to the sink. Izuku looked towards where Eri pointed, and as Eri said, there was a bowl right next to the sink, wrapped up to preserve the heat. "Akame-san didn't want to purposely eat your meal, so she placed it there," Eri explained. I widened my eyes as Akame kept her head down, as you could slightly see a tinge of blush coming off her face. Leon was looking at Akame as she grinned. "Oh, I see where this is going," Leon thought, as Tatsumi was still surprised that Akame could control herself for saving a bowl for someone. Tatsumi was processing the whole thing. Eventually, his brain stopped working. Izuku was about to speak until Shiel walked and looked at the table. "Huh? What happened to my breakfast?" she asked as everyone in the room, except Eri's sweat dropped. In a secluded area near the night raid base. An injured man was leaning under a rock as Negenda kneeled right next to him. "Were you followed?" Negenda asked as the man shook his head. "I was. The only one who escaped," the man struggled to get his words out as he was close to crossing over. He reached for the inside of his jacket and pulled a letter out. "This is the information we received," he groaned. Negenda grabbed it. "It's in safe hands now. You can rest," she reassured him. He looked at her with desperate eyes. "Please make sure the revolution succeeds." His words slowly became quieter as he drifted. His eyes became dull as he had no life in his body now. "I will, I promise," Negenda stated as she covered the man up as he laid there, finally getting the peace that he long wanted. Back at the base. Negenda had called everyone to the conference room. They waited for their boss to give them orders. "We have received word that Zank, the executioner, has returned," she stated as almost everyone in the room had a grim look. "He's back, huh?" Leon muttered. Tatsumi then looked at everyone. Who?" he asked as Main turned to him. "You seriously don't know him? Wow, you really are from the countryside," she berated him. "So who is this executioner?" asked Izuku as he looked at Negenda. "He used to be a former prisoner executioner, but after he chopped off so many heads, he's gone crazy and now it's become a hobby for him," Negenda explained to Tatsumi and Izuku. "And now he's roaming around the capital now. Word says that he got himself a tegu from the warden of the prison," Leon added. Tatsumi was even more confused about something. What are tegus?" he asked. Then Akame pulled out her katana. "This is a tegu," she stated as Tatsumi's sweat dropped. "Not really helpful," he informed her. Negenda suddenly got hit with realization. "Oh, that's right, I never really explained to you what they are, did I?" Tatsumi nodded. Negenda then explained to Tatsumi what tegus are and what they're capable of. "So does everyone have tegus here?" Tatsumi asked. Negenda nodded. "Murasame, the one-hit killer, the name is pretty self-explanatory. One CT from it, a poison will run through our heart, can instantly kill you. There is no cure. Bulat has Incursio, the demon armor, impenetrable armor with added physical boost, Roman artillery, Pumpkin a rifle that is more advanced than any other standard rifle. When the user is in a pinch, the fire power increases. Cutter of creation. Extase a large pair of scissors that can be used for defense and cutting down enemies. Infinite uses. Cross-tail strings made out of a dragon's beard. Good for creating traps or alerting enemies' position. And finally, King of Beasts. Lionel allows the user to transform their appearance and gives them heightened senses and strength. Magenta explained to Tatsumi. Tegus also have trump cards that could be defensive or offensive, Magenta added. So which one's the strongest Tegu? Tatsumi asked. Well, it depends on the user, but if I have to say, it's an ice Tegu and the user is very strong as well, Magenta grimly informed him. Fortunately, the person is not here as of right now, she reassured him. For now we need to deal with Zank, since we can't identify what Tegu he wields. I'll be splitting you up into 2 pairs. Watch each other's back, Magenta ordered. What about Izuku? What will he do? Leon asked. He'll also be going with you guys. He will be providing support to whoever he pairs up with, Magenta informed him. Main then realized something. Wait, boss, have you figured out what Green's Tegu is? She asked. Izuku jumped at the mention of his quirk. Magenta shook her head. No, I have not. She looked at Izuku as he sighed. What about you, Izuku? Do you know? Lubbock asked him. Izuku calmed himself down as he shook his head as well. I don't know. My mentor just gave it to me, Izuku explained to them. We'll figure it out someday. Right now you all have a mission to do, Magenta stated as all of them turned to her. Roger, all of them replied. At the capital. It was dead night as Izuku and Akim were patrolling the streets. Izuku looked around, fully alert. There aren't that many people out here, Izuku stated as Akim nodded. It'll be easier since we don't have to get Spo. Izuku couldn't finish as Akim grabbed him and pulled him to a corner as she covered his mouth. Guards, she whispered as guards were also patrolling this area as well. Meanwhile, Izuku was freaking out. Is so see close, he shouted in his head as she was literally right next to him with her hand over his mouth. After the guards were gone, they came out of hiding and continued to find their target. Izuku was walking behind Akim as she took the lead. Izuku then looked at her blade as it was sheathed. Hey Akim, Izuku got her attention. She slightly turned her head to look at him. HM, she hummed. So that blade can kill someone with one cut? Izuku asked as she nodded. She held it out. One cut is all I need, but I try not to overestimate its capabilities, she informed him. Izuku nodded. But Izuku was really interested in the blade, so he did what he usually does. Izuku's muttering was interrupted by Akim flicking her finger at his forehead. I'll tell you about Murasame after the mission, she informed him. Izuku held his forehead as he nodded. While Izuku and Akim continued patrolling their area, Izuku looked ahead as he looked at Akim. He couldn't help but wonder. She seems to be around my age, but she's seen more battles than me. What made her this way? He continued to wonder as he failed to notice a man standing on a clock tower as he peered over the city. What a night it is, a city with an executioner and assassins. Splendid, splendid, the man exclaimed. Now who will be my meal tonight? He asked as he scanned the area. His eyes spotted Tatsumi as he ventured with Leon. Oh, such passion and drive in his eyes. He then kept scanning over the city until his eyes stopped at Izuku. Oh my, such heroism, a sense of justice, splendid, he exclaimed and snapped his fingers. I'll go for the most delicious one of them all, he decided. Izuku and Akim then took a short break as they sat there. Akim was eating her emergency rations, as for Izuku he bought a small drink. He kept wondering as he looked at Akim, I may be overstepping my boundaries on this one, but something about her makes me wonder what she's been through, Izuku thought as he kept drinking his drink. But as soon as Izuku was about to ask, he felt something that needed to be done first. I'll be right back, Izuku stated as Akim took a bite out of her meal. As Izuku was walking away from the bench, is nature calling? Akim asked as Izuku jumped. Izuku then released his fluid at a nearby alley. Maybe I'm nervous, Izuku sighed. He zipped up his pants to his suit as he was about to head out until he felt someone behind him. He quickly turned to see who it was, but he then stood there shocked at the figure in front of him. All Might? Izuku stood there in the alley as he looked at the figure known as All Might. As Izuku took a step forward, All Might rotated and went the other direction. Wait, Izuku exclaimed as he ran after him. Akim then approached the alley that Izuku went to. Are you done yet? We have to? She stopped as she didn't see anyone. Meanwhile, Izuku was chasing All Might. While he was chasing him, Izuku had so many questions flooding his mind. What's going on? How did All Might get here? Did they find me here? Izuku thought as All Might stopped in front of what looked to be a chapel. Izuku stopped a few meters away from him. Or could this be a trap? Izuku readied himself as he distanced himself. Izuku activated 20% of full cowling and remained where he stood. As All Might had a surprised look, but then it distorted into a wicked and twisted smile. Impressive. How did you know it wasn't the person you loved? A voice asked as it wasn't familiar to Izuku. Who are you? Izuku asked instead of answering his question. Then the image of All Might disappeared as Izuku now sees a man with an eye-looking item on his forehead. The man had gray blonde hair and a gray trench coat on. You can call me Zank, the executioner. Zank then protruded hidden blades on both of his arms, forming an X shape. Izuku kept looking at his now opponent. This is bad. I didn't expect to encounter him so soon. I should probably stall until backup arrives, Izuku thought. Well then, before they arrive here, your head will be on the floor, Zank exclaimed. Izuku widened his eyes. What? Did he read my mind? Izuku thought as Zank grinned. Surprised? This is my Tegus ability. Spectator is capable of reading one. As Zank tried to explain his Tegu, Izuku took the opportunity to attack as he dashed towards Zank. Zank knew this was coming and stepped to the right as Izuku flew by with a straight kick. Izuku then skidded as he turned to see Zank already upon him. Izuku then tried to dodge the blade that was coming on his left, but Zank read his thoughts and moved his right, and as Izuku barely had time to dodge, he ducked under both blades as he tried to go in for a punch, only to be met with a kick aimed for his face. Izuku put up his arms as he felt the impact and was sent back a few feet. Izuku then put his right arm forward and reeled his fingers back as he launched a barrage of Delaware smashes at Zank. Zank rushed towards Izuku as he dodged and cut the air bullets. Izuku then planted his left leg on the ground as hard as he could as the ground protruded up, creating a wall. Izuku then jumped up the wall as he then spotted Zank at the bottom of the wall and lunged forward. Zank looked up as he grinned. Zank was enjoying every moment of this. He stepped to the right as Izuku came crashing down and caused an explosion of dust. Zank then covered his eyes as the dust was filling the area. Zank then looked around him. Izuku then came up behind him as he reeled his fist back. Zank didn't have enough time to turn around fast enough as Izuku collided his fist into his right cheek, sending Zank back a few meters. Zank stopped himself from going any further. He then started to laugh. Splendid, splendid. Using the wall so I couldn't read your thoughts and movements while crashing down to cover the area with dust to conceal my sight on you. Splendid, splendid, Zank exclaimed. Izuku got ready for his opponent to move. Why? Izuku muttered. Huh? Zank hummed. Why are you doing this? What are you gaining from all this murder? Izuku asked as Zank stared at him. He then smiled. Because I enjoy this. Seeing the expressions on severed heads, nothing is more entertaining than that. That's why I do this, Zank shouted in glee. Izuku had a horrified look, but then resolved himself. I can't save you, so Izuku thought. Save me? From what? The only person who needs saving is you, Zank retorted. Izuku hardened his eyes as he readied himself again. I'll stop you from hurting other people, right here, right now, Izuku exclaimed with determination. Is that so? I wonder what face you'll have once I have your head, Zank exclaimed. AceAkuma was walking through the streets as she stopped to feel an eeriness in the air as she looked up. Izuku, she muttered. Izuku swept his right leg as if to kick something. As he did that, an air current powerful enough to send someone flying back. The air current was racing towards Zank as he jumped out of the way and dashed towards Izuku. Izuku then charged at him also as he launched Delaware smashes at him. Zank kept dodging all of the air bullets as they closed in on each other. Zank then aimed for Izuku's head, but Izuku slid under him as he was now behind him. Zank turned around as he tried to attack him, but Izuku was nowhere to be seen. Zank then looked up as he spotted Izuku above him. "Detroit Smash!" Izuku shouted, but Zank knew this was coming, so he sidestepped to the left of Izuku. Izuku smashed his fist on the ground, but not before receiving a cut on his left shoulder. Izuku jumped back a few meters away from Zank. Zank smiled. "I must say, you're a quick thinker. But all of that is pointless when I can read your every move," Zank puffed. Izuku was breathing heavily. "He's reading my thoughts to counter my moves, but what I can tell is that he can't keep up with my speed that much. The only way to stop him and knock him out is to exceed what I'm used to," Izuku thought. Zank smiled. "By all means struggle to beat me. The end result will be the same," Zank declared. "If you truly want to save me, boy, then end me so I don't have to listen to the torments of my victims," Zank exclaimed. Izuku clenched his fist. "Whose fault is that? Taking away people's life for your entertainment? I'll stop you, whatever it takes," Izuku exclaimed. Izuku got ready as he charged up one for all as he felt the power rushing through his body. "My body can handle 20%, but in order to beat him I need speed to where he can't react fast enough to my attacks," Izuku thought as the electricity around him danced furiously around him, making him glow ever so brightly. "Full cowling 30%, Izuku shouted in his mind. Zank readied himself. "You think 10% more of your power will help? Why?" Zank couldn't finish his sentence as Izuku was already upon him. Izuku's foot smashed into Zank's face as he was sent flying back. "Grog," Zank groaned. Izuku skidded as he landed. He felt his bones start to creak. "My body hurts, but I can still move. I can probably last for 3-4 minutes at most," Izuku estimated. He then looked at his opponent as Zank started to get up. "That's plenty of time. Such speed and power. This won't be easy," Zank thought as he then looked at Izuku as his face distorted into annoyance. Zank then proceeded to dash towards Izuku. Zank was faster than before, but Izuku was ready for his approach as he smashed the ground again and created a wall again, making Zank stop as he jumped above the wall, expecting Izuku to jump too, but only to be met with Izuku still on the ground, but Izuku launched a barrage of air bullets at him. Zank made contact with the air bullets as Zank received them. It stopped Zank in the air, making Izuku use that chance to jump in the air and lifted his leg above Zank. Izuku then brought it down on Zank's head. He then came crashing down at the makeshift wall as an explosion of dust and rumble was created. Zank struggled to get up as Izuku landed a few meters away from him. Zank smiled. "Splendid, splendid. To inflict this much damage, looks like I'll have to take this seriously," Zank exclaimed. His tegu then started to shift as the eyelids widened. Zank stood there as he waited for Izuku to approach him. Izuku dashed forward already upon Zank as he reeled his fist back and slammed it into Zank, but Zank had fully blocked the attack as he grinned. Zank then pushed away Izuku's fist as he sent a flurry of slashes at Izuku. Izuku widened his eyes as the only thing he could do was to take the flurry of slashes. Izuku lifted his leg as he slammed it into Zank's blade as he pushed him back, making him stop the flurry of slashes. Izuku was heavily breathing now as his body was riddled with cuts and gashes. Izuku tried to ignore the pain as he took a step forward, but then his body stopped working as he fell to the ground. "Crap! I hit the time limit," Izuku panicked as he struggled to get up. Zank then proceeded to walk towards Izuku. "Now, time for your head," Zank slowly approached him. Get up, Izuku screamed in his mind. Zank then dashed towards him. "It's over," Zank shouted. But then a katana fell from the sky, landing in between Zank and Izuku as the owner of the blade landed near the blade and grabbed it as she did an upward slash at Zank as he quickly reacted and blocked it with his blades. He skidded back as now in front of him was Akame. Izuku looked at her surprised. "Akame," Izuku was relieved to see her. Akame looked back at Izuku. "I'm glad you're still alive. Once this is finished, I'll treat those wounds," Akame reassured Izuku. Zank smiled with glee. "Ah, the ill-famed Akame, it's a pleasure to meet you," Zank greeted. Akame looked at him. "It's a pleasure as well, for you are my target." "Akame, watch out," He can read your thoughts and muscle movement, Izuku warned. Akame nodded. Is that so? Well, is he fast enough to counter me? Akame then dashed towards Zank as he intercepted her. They both sent a flurry of slashes at each other, each colliding with one another, sparks flying as their movement was faster than the eye can see. Akame parried one of his attacks as she sent a kick towards him that sent Zank back a few meters. Not only she's fast, but she has power that matches up with her speed. I can barely keep up from the damages I took from the boy, Zank thought as Akame readied her blade. She closed her eyes as she controlled her breathing. Zank widened his eyes. Oh, one without thought. But that's useless, Zank thought as his tegu started to shift. Akame then pounced towards Zank as she did a downward slash above his head. A normal person couldn't block the attack, but Zank was already blocking as he pushed her blade back slammed on the floor where she stood. Akame bounced back, but not after receiving a cut on her thigh. She skidded back as she readied herself again. Zank readied himself too. Say, Akame, what do you do with the voices? Zank asked her. Akame made a perplexed look. Voices? She asked. You know, the voices of your victims that forever torment you. I constantly hear their scree. I don't hear them, Akame interrupted Zank. Zank then lowered his blades. That's a shame, and here I thought we had so much in common. Zank sighed as he widened his eyes, and so did his tegu. Such a disappointment, Akame, he shouted. Akame widened her eyes as the appearance of Zank had changed and saw someone else besides her target. Kurom? Akame muttered. Izuku was looking at Akame as she stopped moving all of a sudden. Her face was filled with grief and surprise. Akame? What's wrong? Izuku asked, but she didn't respond. Izuku looked at Zank as he was smiling as always. She's seeing something that I saw last time. She must be seeing someone dear to her. Crap, he has an opening now, Izuku thought. Akame, snap out of it. It's just an illusion. Izuku tried to snap Akame out of her trance, but it seemed she was paralyzed. It's pointless. Right now she sees someone dear to her. Of course she can't attack me now, Zank explained. He then charged forward, ready to end the battle. Die while you gaze upon the one you love. Akame, Zank shouted. As he jumped in the air, Izuku took the chance to use every energy in his body and directed it to his right hand. He reeled his finger back. I won't let you, Izuku snapped back at him. Zank was surprised by the sudden movement from the boy. Delaware Smash Air Force, Izuku shot an air bullet at him. It raced towards his face as it collided with its cheek. Gurg, Zank groaned. But that didn't stop him as he continued racing towards Akame. Izuku struggled to get up as he tried using every will in his body to stand. I have to stop him, Izuku struggled to get his words out. Izuku wanted to knock him out and retrieve the tegu, but his body wasn't functioning properly as he was riddled with cuts and gashes. His body was under stress for going over his limit. Izuku then witnessed Zank already upon Akame as he was about to bring down his blade to her. No, Izuku had an horrified look, but that was quickly changed when he felt a cold airiness around Akame. He looked at her face as she had a deadly gaze of a killer that reminded him of Stain. She quickly did a sideways slash, aiming for Zank's neck. Zank barely reacted in time to block it as he was pushed back. Zank had a look of disbelief. Why? You were supposed to gaze on the person you love, Zank exclaimed. Akame's hair was covering her eyes, but she slightly lifted her head as she gave him a death stare at him. It's because I love her, that I want to kill her as fast as possible. Zank had a shiver in his spine, and so did Izuku. What? Zank was left in disbelief as the fear in his body rose. It looks like it's over, Akame justified, as soon as she said that Zank's blades started to crack. He then panicked as he felt death grabbing him. I'll eliminate that blade of yours first, Akame charged at him as she propped her blade forward. Like hell I'll let you, Zank snapped back. They clashed once more as they both exchanged another flurry of blows, but Akame was faster as she kept parrying her opponent's strikes. Every swing Zank threw was getting parried. He started to panic as he tried to find an opening. Akame then found an opening to his defenses as she did an upward slash at the bottom of his blades. As she did that, Zank's blade shattered. Akame then shifted her blade to the left as she was ready to cut her opponent down. She had one word for her opponent: eliminate. She then slashed Zank's neck as he coughed up BLD. Izuku watched as he felt the cold feeling rushing down his spine. Akame is a natural. The amount of battles she's been through is enough evidence that she can adapt to her opponent's moves. She's a natural assassin. But there's something around her, like a shroud of darkness, that prevents her from experiencing normal feelings like an ordinary person should, Izuku thought. Akame then sheathed her blade as she looked at Zank. You shouldn't hear those voices anymore, she stated. Zank's muffles on his ears shattered. Zank then realized the voices that were tormenting him were gone. Ah, they're gone, splendid. I thank you, Akame. Zank muttered his final words as his life drifted away. Izuku stared at the body as he felt guilty. I may have not done the final blow, but I didn't want to kill him. There could have been a chance to save him other than ending him. Izuku solemnly looked at the former executioner. Izuku was then snapped back as he still had the pain coursing through his body. GRRGH, Izuku groaned. Akame rushed to his side as she put her hand in his chest. Don't move too much. I'll treat those wounds, Akame reassured him as Izuku nodded. While she carried him to a secluded alley where no one could spot them, she started to place ointments on his wounds and bandages. While she was doing that, Izuku was conflicted. Akame, Izuku called out. Akame hummed. Was it really necessary to kill him? Izuku asked. Akame stopped as she looked at him. She could tell Izuku was bothered by this. After all, she didn't forget how he didn't want to kill anyone. It was my mission, Izuku. It had to be done, Akame justified as Izuku looked at his hands. There could have been another way, Izuku meekly said. Izuku, why do you not wish to kill people? Akame asked as Izuku looked at her. Akame still had her stoic expression, but something in her eyes told him that there was darkness shrouding her happiness. Where I was from, my mentor saved people with a smile on his face. No matter what situation he was in, he always smiled. So I wanted to be like him, someone who saves everyone with a smile. But after coming here, I'm starting to doubt myself. Can I save someone who's being tormented? Izuku asked as he was desperate to find an answer. Akame stared at him as she felt sadness coming off of him. Akame then wrapped her arms around Izuku and pulled him to a gentle and warm hug. Izuku then snapped out of his thoughts as he was now a blushing mess. Akame, Izuku stuttered. Izuku, you bear responsibility that saving everyone can bring happiness. But in order to do that is to first make yourself happy as well, Akame answered him. I don't know what your country is like, but hearing it from you, it seems like a nice place. Izuku, if saving people is something you can do, then do it. It's your own life, Akame stated. Izuku widened his eyes as he nodded. Thank you, Akame. Izuku smiled as he felt warmth from her embrace. Akame hummed. Izuku was still filled with doubt, but when Akame was there, he felt like it had ease. Akame then let him go. Izuku then felt discomfort from the sudden release, but decided to keep it to himself. We should get going. The rest of the team should be looking for us, Akame suggested as Izuku nodded. She put his arm over her shoulder as she helped him walk. While they were walking, a person was watching them from afar. The man smiled under his mask. Not yet. There's still so much room to improve. Izuku Midoriya. He then vanished into the shadows. Izuku laid at his bed. He had so much in his mind. It had been 5 days after the mission. Izuku was conflicted and felt stuck. What is it that's bothering me? Why do I feel like there's something I need to do? Izuku thought. He laid there as he stared at the ceiling, remembering the fight against Zank. The words he said to him, but also the words that Akame said when she was under his illusion. Something about those words bothered him. He couldn't figure it out. As he stormed through his thoughts, he felt a hand on his right arm. He looked at the person who was cuddling with his arm and found Eri peacefully sleeping. When he looked at her, he was reminded that he needed to get himself and her back home soon. But not without saving the people of this world. If he could, He felt his eyes start to get heavy. He then drifted into sleep. While Izuku drifted into sleep, in another room another was awake. She was also going through what happened 5 days ago. Akame thought about what Izuku said, how Izuku was inspired to save others just like his mentor. But she knew that people who are driven by corruption cannot be saved. The only way to do that is ending their lives, but Izuku seems like to find another way. Akame shook off the thought as she decided to get some sleep. She closed her eyes as she drifted off into her slumber. The next day Izuku felt someone shaking him as he opened his eyes to see Tatsumi standing over him. "Hey, wake up, we got training to do," Tatsumi stated. Izuku rubbed his eyes as got up and gently laid Eri on the bed. "So who's training us today?" Izuku asked. "Shield is training us today." Izuku nodded and wondered how training was going to be since Shield is an airhead. He had an idea, but he didn't expect to be swimming in a lake with a full suit of armor. Tatsumi and Izuku struggled to fully use the motions as the suit of armor was weighing them down. "This must be to increase our endurance. I can feel my whole body screaming at me," Izuku thought. They both swam out of the water as they were heavily breathing and drenched. "Good job, you're able to swim with a suit of armor. Congratulations to you both," Shield complimented. "Ah yeah, thanks," Tatsumi replied. "Sorry, I'm usually in charge of training the recruits since I'm not useful around the base," Shield apologized. Izuku then waved his hands. "Hey, it's fine, nothing to worry about," Izuku reassured her. Shield then bowed her head towards them, but her glasses dropped. "Ah, my glasses," Shield frantically stated as she tried to find her glasses. "She's really clumsy," Tatsumi and Izuku both thought. "So why don't you do chores around the base?" Tatsumi asked as Shield finally found her glasses as put them on. Well, I tried cooking, but I burnt the meat and Akame got really mad at me. I tried sweeping and mopping, but I ended up making a huge mess, so Bulot had to do it. Then Leon told me to go buy salt, but instead I bought sugar instead, but with a large amount of them. And then I tried to help with laundry, but I ended up almost drowning Maine," Shield explained. Tatsumi and Izuku imagined all the scenarios that Shield told them. "Ah, well, don't feel too bad about drowning Maine," Tatsumi reassured her. "Yes," Tatsumi exclaimed in his mind. Then out of nowhere Izuku smacked him behind his head. "Oh, what was that for?" Tatsumi shouted. "What if Maine hears you?" Izuku warned as Tatsumi just waved his hands. "It's not like she's camping out somewhere and pointing her sniper at me," Tatsumi brushed it off. "But she could," Shield stated as Tatsumi jumped and shivered. Izuku sweat dropped and sighed. "Oh, by the way, Shield," Tatsumi called out. Shield hummed. "Out of everyone you seem to be normal for the most part," Tatsumi stated. "Well, I'm not really normal," Shield interjected. "You see, when I wasn't recruited into the Revolutionary Army, I was a part-timer, but I ended up getting fired because of my clumsiness. But one day I met this girl. She was really nice to me, but one day her ex-boyfriend stormed into her house when we were chatting. He grabbed her neck and threatened to kill her. I was in shock and horrified. I looked at the knife that was next to me and plunged it into his neck," Shield stated as Izuku and Tatsumi listened intently. "When I killed him, my friend was horrified that she didn't talk to me ever again. The next day his friends came to avenge their fallen comrade. But in the end I killed them all, and that's when I figured out killing scum in this country is what I'm good at. If I can erase the scum from this society, then everything will be fine. So that's how I was recruited here," Shield finished her story. Tatsumi couldn't think of anything to say, but Shield smiled. "It's fine, because either way I met people who actually care for me now," Shield reassured him. Izuku was listening to their conversation. Everyone's had it rough. These people were just victims to this cruel society, Izuku thought. "Seems you guys are doing great, Tatsumi, Izuku." A voice called out in the river as Izuku and Tatsumi both turned towards the voice. Bukat busted out of the water as he flexed his muscles. It went silent as Tatsumi and Izuku sweat dropped at the scene in front of them. Night Raid Base. As the team was grouped up in the conference room, Negenda held out the tegu that Akame retrieved from Zank. Thanks to all of you, we've helped the Revolutionary Army progress further, Negenda thanked them. Here, Tatsumi, try it on, Negenda suggested. Really I can, Tatsumi asked as Bulat stepped beside him. Why not? You improved since the last time, so this might help you in battle, Bulat stated. Tatsumi looked at the tegu as he grabbed it from Negenda and put it on his forehead. Zank used it to read his opponent's mind. Try using it on me, Akame suggested as Tatsumi and Akame stared at each other. You want to. Tatsumi gulped. You want to eat meat tonight, Tatsumi declared. Akame was surprised. It works, Akame confirmed. Iri then looked confused. But Akame-san, you always want to eat meat, Iri stated as she looked at her. That's because it hasn't activated yet, Leon pointed out. It has other abilities. Just use those, Main stated. Tatsumi then pouted. All right, he then sat down and concentrated. It took a while, but then the eye on the forehead opened as he looked at the girls in front of him. Izuku was waiting for a response, but instead Tatsumi was blushing and tried to cover his eyes. Izuku raised an eyebrow. Well, does it work? Main asked as she was close to Tatsumi. Tatsumi was about to speak, but then he felt immense pain on his head as he clenched it. What? Tatsumi groaned. It's not compatible, Lubbock stated. I'll take it off, Akame stated as she took the tegu off of Tatsumi. What was that? Tatsumi asked. It's not compatible. Looks like I'll have to take it to the Revolutionary Army, Negenda stated. You probably thought it didn't go well with your outfit, Main stated. First impressions impact the user and the tegu, so that's probably why it rejected you, Lubbock explained. Oh, Tatsumi sighed. Don't worry, we'll find you a tegu that's compatible, Bulat reassured. We may do assassinations, but our submission is to retrieve other tegus or to destroy it, Akame informed him. You're going to need to be informed about them, so here's a book about them, Negenda stated as she handed Tatsumi a book. He then looked through the pages. Wow, there's so many. Each one has their own unique abilities, so make sure you're well informed, Negenda informed him. Tatsumi nodded. He then felt like he had hope. Is there a tegu that revives the dead? Tatsumi exclaimed as he looked at Negenda. Everyone in the room went quiet as Negenda sighed. No, there isn't one, Negenda answered. But you said that there were some tegus that were lost, so Tatsumi was desperately trying to find it, but the dead stay dead, Tatsumi. There's nothing we can do about it, Akame stated. Izuku was in thought as he felt Iri clench his pants as she hated that word because of her father died. Tatsumi then looked down as he felt hopeless. Izuku solemnly looked at him. After the meeting was over, Izuku placed Iri to bed as he went to get fresh air. He then spotted Tatsumi and Shiel outside as Shiel was hugging him. Izuku stopped as he didn't want to interrupt, so he went to another place to calm his mind. He went to where there was another cliff, but with a tree. He went towards it, but when he got closer, someone was already there. As he looked closer, he spotted Akame leaning against the tree, looking at the sky. Izuku wanted to stop, but something told him to keep moving. He didn't know why, but he felt he needed to. He then approached Akame as she turned her head and spotted him. You can't sleep either? Akame asked as Izuku just shook his head. No, I just thought I'd get some fresh air, Izuku answered her. She nodded. She then scooted to the right and padded to the free space on her left, gesturing for him to sit. Izuku nodded as he sat down next to her. They both looked at the moon as it was a crescent. They sat there in silence for a while until Izuku decided to speak. Akame, he called out. She hummed. What made you into who you are today? Izuku asked. Akame froze as it became silent. Izuku then panicked. Sorry, I shouldn't have get the Timrilasaur. Izuku was then interrupted by Akame with a finger flick to the nose. It's fine, I'll only tell you one thing though, Akame stated as Izuku nodded. Akame then sighed as she looked at him. My parents sold me and my sister to the Empire, Akame informed him. Izuku widened his eyes in shock as he absorbed the information. Izuku was about to ask more, but then decided not to as it would be an invasion of personal privacy. I'm sorry that happened to you, Izuku solemnly stated. Akame shook her head. What happened. There was nothing that could have been done, Akame reassured him, but Izuku wasn't satisfied. As a matter of fact, he was pissed. How could parents just sell their children? He looked at Akame as she had her usual expression. Her stoic one. Izuku knew that someone took her smile away from her. There was darkness in the path she took, but he didn't care. Something inside of him screamed to help her, to restore that smile, to save her. But not just her, it was the rest of Night Raid. Everyone had their stories, the path of darkness they took. Even Tatsumi took this path. Izuku clenched his fist. He then abruptly got up. Akame was startled by his sudden movement. Akame, Izuku called out. She looked at him curiously. From this moment onward, I'll do whatever I can to help you guys, Izuku declared as Akame was confused on what he meant. What do you mean? Akame asked. But then her face turned into a surprised one as Izuku faced her as the moonlight was shining on his face. He had shown a smile that was bright enough to wipe away the darkness. I promise to wipe the darkness not just from this empire, not just Night Raid, but as well as yours, whatever it takes, Izuku stated. Akame was staring into his eyes as she never saw such brightness in one's eyes before. Akame couldn't comprehend what he was saying until, Akame, I'll be your hero, Izuku stated and smiled. Akame widened her eyes. She felt her heartbeat quicken as she felt her something spark up inside. Well, look at you, Prince Charming, a voice called out as Izuku jumped and looked at who it was. Leon stood there, but not just her, it was the rest of Night Raid including Ire. WW, what is everyone doing here? Izuku exclaimed. Oh, don't worry, we totally didn't hear you just saying your marriage vows to Akame, Tatsumi teased. Izuku then became a blushing mess. It's not like that, I swear, Izuku interjected. Oh, come on, just think about it. You and Akame with little Iri in your little cottage. Ah, what a family, Lubbock sighed. Huh? What's that supposed to mean? Izuku shouted. Izuku, you're so manly as expected of a man, Bulat complimented. Izuku was frantically trying to explain to them until Iri walked up to him. Deku-san, Iri called out. Huh, what's up, Iri? Izuku asked as Iri looked at him. Is Akame-san your girlfriend? Iri asked. Izuku then choked on his spit as he heard that as everyone started to laugh. Iri, when did you learn that? Izuku asked. Lemillion-sen said that when a boy and girl talk about important stuff, and when a boy wants to protect a girl, then they are boyfriend and girlfriend, Iri explained as Izuku's sweat dropped. I think Mirio-senpai is teaching you something that is somewhat correct but incorrect, Izuku sighed. I can see it. The wedding bells, Leon dreamily sighed. Izuku's face was now completely red. I told you it's not like that, Izuku exclaimed. The group kept teasing the poor boy. Akame, on the other hand, was too focused on what Izuku said. That was the first person ever that said something like that to her. She then smiled gently as she held her hand against her chest, feeling her heartbeat. She looked at the group, then at Izuku. She smiled. Thank you, Izuku. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through What If Deku Was Teleported into the World of Despair. I hope you found it as intriguing and thought-provoking as we did. A big shout out to AceAkuma for crafting such a compelling story. Don't forget to check out their profile on FanfictionNet for more amazing works. The link is in the description below. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to What If Deku 2 for more fascinating explorations into the world of fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we're always excited to hear your thoughts and suggestions in the comments section.